to GreenBiz Studio. My name's Sarah Golden. I'm Senior Energy Analyst at GreenBiz, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Elizabeth Willmott, who is the Carbon Program Director at Microsoft. Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you.
To start out, can you tell me what is Microsoft's net zero plan?
Well, in January 2020, Microsoft made a commitment to be carbon negative by 2030. And that means that we will reduce our greenhouse gas emissions over half by 2030 across our value chain, including scopes 1, 2, and 3, remove the rest, and then remove the equivalent of our historical emissions by 2050. And beyond that, beyond our own operations, we also want to empower all organizations to record, report, and reduce their sustainability impacts through our Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability.
That is incredibly ambitious and impressive, and it also hints at this growing carbon offset market. And I know carbon offsets have come with a healthy dose of skepticism, especially for climate activists who for a long time have seen offsets as a way to sort of, press a delete button and not necessarily change behavior. So what is the case for offsets, and how has your thinking on the issue evolved?
Having been a climate activist prior to joining Microsoft, I think it's completely understandable to perceive skepticism about the market. However, we also know from climate scientists at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that we need 10 gigatons of carbon removal by the middle of the century. And in fact, Microsoft's request for proposals for carbon removal last year only found 1.5 million metric tons of qualified removal. So we know that carbon removal in particular needs to scale up dramatically in order to meet the needs of the planet. So in that sense, we perceive carbon offsets as a valuable way to help drive that carbon removal market.
I want to talk a little bit more about that request for proposal for offsets. What happened when you sent that out? And can you quantify how much we need in offsets in order to meet our climate goals?
Yes. So the IPCC tells us that we need 10 gigatons of carbon removal by the middle of the century in order to avoid catastrophic climate change, even when we decarbonize at a rapid rate. And so that is a considerable amount, when in reality, what Microsoft found in our initial request for proposals was that we only perceived 1.5 million metric tons of qualified removal in the past year. So that's a very dramatic gap that we need to close. And we think that carbon offsets play an important role in that market development.
Yeah, and you just mentioned this idea that we definitely need more. What other pinch points are there in order to really scale the carbon offset market?
We see three realities in terms of the carbon offset market today and carbon removal market today. Number one is that we need clear standards for what carbon removal is and isn't. That was a very clear lesson learned in our first request for proposals, although in our second purchasing round, the market awareness has improved and increased. Another aspect of this is that carbon removal is not carbon capture and it is not avoided emissions projects, though both of those are also crucially important. Carbon removal is literally pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and sequestering it for a long duration. And the current standards were built for a different purpose. So we need a much stronger rule book for how that gets accounted for. The second reality is that natural climate solutions, although we definitely need to support them, are inherently less durable than engineered solutions. And this does not make us want to divest from nature. On the contrary, we need all of the above solutions, but we need to count nature-based solutions differently from engineered solutions. And then finally, the third reality is that there's just a tiny, tiny volume of carbon removal in the market today. And we need to, as our team says, we need to ring the dinner bell for project developers to help begin forward contracts, to build plants, and to develop that volume that the planet so desperately needs.
Yeah, that second point you made about durability, is that the same thing as whether it's permanent?
Yes. So we use the phrase durability because we think that permanence is essentially an effect of engineered solutions such as direct air capture sequestering carbon for millennia, whereas in reality, forestry and soil projects can only legitimately sequester carbon for 100 years or so at maximum, given the climate risks such as forest fire and pests and human behavior that can actually revert that carbon back to the atmosphere. That's not to say that those projects aren't important. They are, they're crucial, but we just have to be realistic about the difference in how long the carbon actually stays out of the atmosphere.
Okay, well, final question. What are you most excited about within the carbon offset market?
It's a brand new market. It's an emerging space. We're really excited at Microsoft about sharing our lessons learned. We know that we're among the first companies to do our homework on this topic, so we're committed to being transparent about our successes and our failures. We think that this is a new way of approaching things because we know that the planet demands that. We simply can't collaborate effectively without that free flowing of lessons learned.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us today in GreenBiz Studio, and thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure, and really look forward to more development in this space.
Until next time, I'm Sarah Golden.